welcome once again. Welcome. This is our monthly webinar. And if you're new here, welcome to the Digital Peacebuilding Africa Community of Practice. This is where we look at, we're all united here by the interest of building peace in our different contexts, and we want to see exactly how do we go about this when we talk about leveraging digital tools, platforms, methods, approaches. And the beauty about this community is that we learn from each other. And so that's why we have monthly webinars where we come on board and have one of us or a friend of one of us to come and just share how they are doing it. And it's up to us to look into how can we go back home and utilize some of these tools. So if you feel like you're wanting to be our next speaker, please do reach out to us after this. I'll share with you our contact details on the chat box. We do have a LinkedIn page, so I'm going to start by saying, before this call ends, the one request we can make is that you show us some love on our LinkedIn page. I will put the link. All you need to do is hit the follow button. We are depending on you to amplify this platform and grow as, expand our territories through your different connections. So thank you so much for joining. My name is Joy Gitao. I'm a proud member of this community of practice, and I'm so happy to have my colleagues on board, all the guests who are here. And at this point, let me just see if we have any comments from the chat. I can see Richard, you're joining us from Abuja, Nigeria. Karibu sana, welcome. Trevor, welcome, joining us from Kenya. David from Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, welcome, welcome. We have Arike from Texas, Houston, Texas. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you all for joining. Trying to see who is our note taker for today, who's going to be our chief rapporteur. Sokfa, do we have?
Yes, he's probably going to join late. He has a different commitment, but he will watch videos and produce our notes.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I just want to hope I'll be taking the screenshot of the chat because I really want to take track of who has joined us and where you're tuning in from. Okay. So, yes. So without further ado, I'd like us to start this session. Today, we're going to be doing something I call mindfulness. One of the things that is very interesting about the work that we do as peace builders is that we cannot give what we do not have. And so it's very important for us to constantly learn how to center ourselves, learn how to be present in everything that we do so that we create the necessary impact that we are hoping to create in our different communities. So today we're going to have a very short breathing exercise that's going to allow us to come into the room. I know some of us are coming from work. Some of you are tuning in on the road. Wherever you're coming from, we just want you to be present here with us. And so we're going to have just literally a minute. Sorry. So if you're seated on a chair, you can just adjust it. And please, if you're driving, do not attempt to close your eyes. That would not be the wisest thing to do. But you can just calm yourself down. So I welcome you to just take an exhale. If your feet are crossed, I welcome you to just let them go. And for your arms, open your palms so that you're open to receive, and you just release any form of tension that you may have. So on the count of 1, 2, 3, I want you to take a big breath in, and at the count of 1, 2, 3 again, I want you to release. So 1, 2, 3, breathe in and out. One, two, three, breathe in and out. Once again, breathe in and out. And take the next 20 seconds to just pace ourselves and continue with the breathing. All right, so I welcome you to slowly open your eyes and welcome to this session. Welcome. In case you're joining us, this is our monthly DP Africa Community of Practice monthly webinar where we meet, we connect, and we get to learn from each other. So in the spirit of connecting, please do tell us where you're tuning in from. Just type on the chat, say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm tuning in from this country. And in between the sessions, we will have moments where we can connect. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite our founder, Dr. Sokfa John. He probably didn't he didn't want to speak, but I know it's always good I know we all want to hear from him. So Sokfa, your task for today will just be to tell us one thing that inspired you to start DP Africa and where you'd like DP Africa to be, because these are the members, these are the people who we are trusting to take this vision. Yeah. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. Yes, I was hoping not to have to say anything, but I'm so happy. It's always a great pleasure for me to meet every month and to see all of you joining. Those that have been joining us since April and those joining us for the first time. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and commitment to this, but also your commitment and interest in peace building, which is what brings us here. And to Rose for accepting to speak to us today. We truly appreciate it. I know you very well as a brilliant person, and I cannot wait to hear what you have to say to us today. Thank you so much for being a great supporter and a wonderful friend. So to respond to your question, Joy, a number of things inspired me, but one of them was the need. I heard from people, I spoke to a lot of people about their use of technology, social media platforms for peace building in Africa on different parts of the continent, and that was part of my research. But increasingly, I kept hearing about efforts to connect to each other and to work together. So sometimes you have people who have trained or received training unrelated, maybe how to combat hate speech or how to do other types of related work. and they try to stay connected by creating WhatsApp groups, or other kinds of strategies. But a lot of these efforts have not turned out to work the way they would want them to work. But also, they indicated interest in broader connections, wanting to connect, beyond their community, beyond the people they trained with, beyond, their country and all of that. And I saw, from listening to people like that, I saw a lot of opportunity for us as Africans to connect from across the continent and outside the continent, those who are interested, so that we can have a platform to exchange ideas, share knowledge, exchange, interests, learn about each other's projects, but also take leadership, right? So there's a lot of digital or technology related peace building projects going on in Africa, led by a lot of external organizations. Um, Doing it, some of them facing a number of challenges that we have seen with conventional peace building for many decades, but also providing a lot of opportunities, So I thought it would be great to see us who work at different levels of peace building across the continent taking some sort of collaborative leadership to shape how digital technologies are used to support peace building in our different communities, but on the continent as a whole. And so that was one of the main inspirations to say, okay, can we experiment with this? Can we bring people together, offer some training at the beginning, and then from there see whether we can build a community of practice that can actually drive and take leadership on this. And I'm glad that we are here today, and hopefully we will continue to expand the community, offer more training, and get more interaction and collaboration on projects and all of that. So that was, I could go on, but I think I'll leave it there for now. So thank you and welcome again to today's webinar. I am very sure that you will enjoy it. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. A round of applause, please. One of the things we do here is encourage each other. So you can use the emojis or you can clap like Rosa if your video is on. Please, I refuse to move on without us showing any emojis to show some support, even a thumbs up for acknowledgement. Thank you. Thank you. I can see a few. Awesome. Awesome. A lot of us think about doing good things, starting very interesting things, but not many of us get to actualizing it and get to build a community. And so for that, SOCFA, we do celebrate you for bringing us on board on your vision, like in your vision, and having us own it and grow this particular community. So we do this every time, and I know some of you already know the story, but it's so that we can all get to own this, that, we need to begin to shape the digital peace building framework in Africa by Africans for Africans, or actually by Africans for the world. And us meeting here every month to generate knowledge, to share, to give testimonials, to give stories is a way of us shaping the narrative from our end, because dealing with conflict or dealing with any situation of violence, it requires a very context-specific approach, and it's up to us to create those context-specific approaches using digital tools. And so this is very, very interesting. And I'm sure you're all seeing what is happening around the world, especially looking at how social media is being used as a very powerful tool to mobilize for violence, for conflict. And so we must really counter that by mobilizing as many people for peace and advocating for the right things. So thank you very much, Sokfa, for that. Again, if you're joining us, karibu sana. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And so we are about to get into the session where we get to hear from our mind maestro, the person who's carrying the wisdom. And the wisdom is in this room. So we're going to collaborate with her to generate knowledge. But we do have the privilege of having someone who has walked this journey before, someone who has looked at what is my background and what am I passionate about, and how can I use what I know to advance what I really am passionate about and what I believe in. And so allow me to introduce her. She's someone I know personally, who I have met. Fun fact, we met in Kampala. I think that was last year but one, I think. And yeah, it's been an honor to see the amazing work that she's been doing. And it's very interesting. We are in a digital peace building forum, and all my machines have decided to do the thing. But anyway, I think I have found my way around. So the person who is going to be speaking to us today is a very phenomenal lady. Okay, I need to see. Yes. So she is a peace building and peace journalism and community development specialist. She's a national and international consultant in strategic communication, corporate crisis management, peace building, public relations, gender and rights issues. She's a trainer of peace journalism, conflict transformation, nonviolent communication. She's into servant leadership and matters to do with do no harm, digital literacy, rights. She's a global peace, Let's Talk UK PR executive lead. She's also an IEP, which is Institute for Economics and Peace ambassador. She's a Rotary Peace Fellow alumni. That's where I actually met her. And she's also a communications lead with ACE Development and Health Consultancy Limited, UK, and director of policy and advocacy at Young African Women Congress Network, with headquarters in Ghana. This lady has so many feathers on her hat. And we have the gift of having her for an hour to interact with her. And today she's going to be specifically talking to us about strategic communication for peace. Strategic communication for peace. You've heard she's a communications expert, and her name is, I haven't mentioned her name. Drum rolls. Her name is Rosaline Obah. So Rosa, you have the floor. So we have some time with you. We are itching to hear from you and hear about those stories. And after she speaks, we'll be having a session where we can have Q&A. But please feel free to have us utilize the chat box section. Please do it. Chat us, tell us if you like the session, tell us what's going on in your mind as she's speaking, and let's keep the session interactive. So over to you, Rosa. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy, and thank you, my friend, Dr. Sokfa. I'm so privileged to be amongst you. Something I always want to always do, especially when it comes to peace and nonviolent communication, anything related to matters where people come together as connecting factors. I think I'm really well in place, and I think I want to call myself blessed to be within this family today. And so, like Joy said, I really want to be talking today about a topic I'm deeply passionate about, and this is about how we use strategic communication to transform conflict and build peace. And for me, this is actually more than theory. It is lived experience. And I find myself in conflict zones, and I think some of us may actually be finding ourselves in the same situation. And I've seen how media can either divide or heal. I've seen how media can be a divider and how media can equally be a connector. So today, I want to walk you through what I've learned, share practical examples, and equally offer some tools we can all use to be effective peace communicators. I know there is one thing that definitely can always connect us, and that is that spirit of peace. And usually, when I find myself in the midst of peace builders in your persons, I feel really privileged that we can talk and actually relate in some circumstances. Now, let me begin with a brief story, and this story it's about where I actually originate from, and this is in the northwest region of Cameroon, where I've spent most of my career working closely with conflict affected communities, violence displaced families, separated communities, and instilled fear. The crisis in Cameroon, especially that was born in a place where I spent most of my life before traveling to the UK, has been something that has been going on for over 8 years, and we've been there, we've seen, we've conquered, and we are still conquering. But as at a certain point, I found out that when people heard their own voices literally on radio, sharing messages of peace and unity, a shift usually occurs. And one of the places or one of the networks that have actually helped to make sure this theory is actually a lived experience is within the Cameroon Community Media Network that has over 500 media practitioners, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, even photographers, media owners, as well as local language broadcasters. I've trained local reporters, launched trauma healing broadcasts, and used storytelling to restore trust and rebuild connections. People can even see themselves sometimes in the simulations that we carry out not only on social media but on our different audiovisual local community media. Today, we are going to explore how communication can be more than words. It can be a tool for peace building. So we'll now go to first of all looking at how we can actually explore strategic communication. So Dr. Sofa, if you don't mind, kindly have this right with me. And I want to thank you for taking this opportunity to help me share the slides. So we'll go to the next slides after this one, which is about defining strategic communication. And just to let you know that strategic communication is actually the deliberate use of communication methods to influence specific outcomes. And in this case, when we talk about peace building, it involves crafting thoughtful, purposeful messages that reduce tension, promote understanding, and support reconciliation. One of the things that this also does is that it also connects people to come together at a dialogue table to talk, to share their grievances, and come towards a win win. That is, what went wrong? How can we sort it out? And how can we rebuild or transform our relationship for common good? It's not simply public relations, it is about aligning intent. message, and medium for peace-oriented goals. For example, using culturally relevant messaging to foster acceptance among divided communities is one of the ways that summarily tells you what strategic communication is all about. So, effective strategic communication requires us to think beyond just transmitting the message. It requires engagement and trust building. That is strategic communication. So, if we can move to the next slide, Doctor, we will look at peace and, of course, conflict communication. Now, conflict is often driven by narratives, stories that justify fear, hatred, and exclusion. Here, media plays a central role in either fueling and resolving these narratives. And let me take this example. A headline like "Youth Clash with Security Forces" can escalate tension. Let me read the headline again. Youth clash with security forces. Now, how can I put it in such a way, or to reframe it constructively, so that it can rather see these two people not as arch enemies or just really distant detractors? This is how I'll reframe it. Community youth seek dialogue with authorities. This is what we call solution-oriented messaging that fosters peace building. So I will not be going towards a headline that will rather add more injury to the wound. I'll rather look for a solution-oriented headline that will find these two people coming together to sort out their differences, to air out, and to look for where each of them erred and look for solutions that can help them transform their relationship. So, framing to me is everything. When we understand the emotional and psychological power of language, we become more mindful about what stories we tell and how we tell them. Remember, it's about how we churn out the words in such a way that helps us to build bridges. Now, let's go further, Dr. Sokwa, to look at the concept of peace journalism. I'm just bringing these terminologies because all of them are interconnected. And this is an area where I'm so passionate about peace journalism. And what is peace journalism? This is a concept that is actually creeping into our newsrooms, not only locally, but globally. In different newsrooms, everyone is actually making sure, in terms of media owners, to see how they can be able to bring in concepts like peace journalism, nonviolent communication, do no harm, as an approach to reporting that promotes solution context based reporting. It also brings us to that point where we are reporting to make sure that parties in conflict understand themselves better. And this entails that instead of focusing solely on violence, we ask ourselves these questions. What are the causes? Who are the peacemakers? What nonviolent alternatives exist? And I gained my inspiration, just like many other peace journalism experts today, from Johan Galton. And he is actually one of the founding fathers of peace journalism. And peace journalism actually encourages fairness, not false balance, and gives voices to the voiceless. It also challenges us that if it bleeds, it leads, mentality that actually would help us to promote stories that help societies to heal rather than go into more violence escalations. So when we look at peace journalism, we are discouraging messaging, whether on social media or on our traditional media, that promotes the us versus them tendencies, headlines that pit A versus B, or words that come in to exaggerate situations in such a way that causes both parties to start doing the act of tit for tat, or avenging or trying to revenge. So those are the things that we need to take into account when it comes to peace journalism, and also helping us to contribute in making sure our diction, the words we use, are words that build bridges, are words that are solution oriented. I know many of us must have heard of this. There are so many people who are always interested in the negative news. But let me take this example that we use every day. If a man bites a dog, it's news. But if a dog bites a man, it's not news. So you see that so many of us are so interested in actually fanning stories that come with a lot of negativity. So we need to start looking at messaging, strategic messaging that comes in to bring two people together. Messaging that comes in to make people to be conscious and acknowledge the consequences of their actions and start seeing themselves in those they cause pain to. And that involves a situation, for example, like in Cameroon. We've done something through the media where we've carried out simulations in our radio drama, in our local language public service announcements, and of course, magazine programs where parties in conflict have seen themselves in the roles they have played, and that has caused a whole lot on the common man, that is the civilian population. Now let's go to the next slide, which has to do with a little bit of my experience in peace journalism and my work with the Cameroon Community Media Network. This is a network that had started in 2016, and that was just close to the start of the crisis in Cameroon. What a coincidence. And this network is one that has to is out there to shift the narratives from traditional journalism to peace journalism. And peace journalism offers the platform whereby editors and reporters will go into their newsrooms and try to make sure that the choices that they make in terms of their newspaper articles, their news stories for broadcast, is churned out in such a way that offers non-violent approaches to the entire public on how they can be able to address their conflict situations. That is peace journalism. And I've been able to, in this network, as national coordinator and equally peace project manager within this network, to develop community radio, community social media programs, as well as TV programs that have helped so far to amplify the voices of the vulnerable. And this has to do with women, youth, persons with disabilities, and survivors of violence. And during this time of this crisis that has gone on for over 8 years, we have used it to train loads of people from all walks of lives. I've trained over 2,000 people, men, women, and youth. I've trained even publishers, media owners that own radio station, local radio stations. Remember, in cases whereby you can have a media owner who is a politician and has never been to a journalism school. All he wants is his money. He doesn't care about anything. He just needs money on his table. So he doesn't care if his reporters go out there, bring anything in the newsroom, and it is a politician sending in an angle for a journalist to publish so that another politician can be, his reputation can be watered down. So sometimes ignorantly, they may not have realized the consequences of valuing money to people's lives. So I have spent weeks, months, sometimes, or a day to bring such people together to let them understand the consequences of some of their media houses' actions on the civilian population. So I've trained local content creators in conflict sensitive journalism and equally empowered citizens to report their realities through peaceful lenses. And one example is something in quotes, Her Voice for Peace series that we ran on one of the prominent radio stations in town. We call the Christian Broadcasting Service, where women from crisis affected regions shared stories and did not only end there, they had to also provide solutions. How can we do this? How can we contribute to broker peace? How can we bring these people in? Sometimes we will have magazine programs where we will train our reporters to say, okay, we don't only just end on within our radio stations or within our messaging. Let us carry the message as well to the community. We produce flyers, we produce posters, we move from one school to another, we move from one church to another and to relevant public places, as far as even thrift schemes where we had different people with different fields, in short, not even knowing anything about peace journalism. So we had to educate everybody, because peace journalism doesn't only end with us, the professionals. Everybody needs to understand what it means to enhance or to contribute to support this concept, peace journalism. So this is what I championed as national coordinator out there in Cameroon, and this is what I've also used to help lots of journalists now, not only within Cameroon but out of Cameroon, to start owning blogs. And here I will share a little story where you find journalists who work under media owners that sometimes when you train them, they are still money minded. They are still funding lots of division because of their political ties. So what do we do? Some time ago, I organized a training where I brought in specialists, and we had to look at how journalists can now have a voice away from their editorial houses, because they also have editorial policies. Now, blogs give you your voice. You can now use it to say whatever you want to say in order to bring parties together. That becomes like your own territory where you can enhance peace journalism. So a lot of journalists now in Bamenda, they belong to media houses, mainstream media houses in Cameroon, but then they have blogs. They are active on the internet, messaging in a solution oriented manner, in such a way that parties have now realized that sometimes it's not pitting A versus B that would do the magic. Other times, have actually championed situations where we go into newsrooms and we start working on scripts. Sometimes we do peer reviews where we start looking at interviews that come from the field, and you find before, like on the state media that carries the state editorial policy within their national broadcast house, you find a minister calling a certain part of the population, for example, in Cameroon, cockroaches. And that media house allows that interview to actually run through. What do you expect the non-separatist fighters to do? They will definitely fight back. So one thing that at least I can actually thank God that it's working now in Cameroon is we are trying as much as possible to filter out of our newsrooms interviews, clips that fan hate and division, interviews that demean a certain a certain part of the people that belong in Cameroon. And that is what we've been actually doing to encourage media people when I train them globally. We have the power to make Omar, but as peace journalists, we have the power to make. So these initiatives go beyond informing, they mobilize communities around, helping them to shape hope, helping them to actually bring narratives that foster peace, that bring narratives that bring people together or start thinking about the words they use on one another. And this is how this has actually worked for a lot of journalists. Yes, I used to tell them at the very beginning, it may not fetch you a lot of money. It may not even fetch you any money, but your credibility and that impact you have behind you, that you bring people together, you start seeing yourself in another light in the near future. I have loads of my colleagues now who are now prominent as reporters with in international organizations like Deutsche Welle, Al Jazeera, BBC, and of course other TV sync, because they have decided to start reporting in such a way that they contribute to be part of the solution of the crisis happening in Cameroon. And this is the same wherever I've trained, because I've shared my experiences too with universities in the US and, of course, in the UK that have never known about how to use such tools or such concepts to transform conflicts or any tension they find themselves. Now let's look at media's influence in conflict zones, Dr. Sokfa. Here, I'm going to talk about the Anglophone crisis and other related crises. And the Anglophone crisis in Cameroon has shown us how dangerous unchecked narratives can be. In Cameroon, a lot has gone down the bridge for these 8 years. Misinformation spreads rapidly, often on WhatsApp, sowing fear and, of course, anger. We've seen how false rumors have sparked confrontations and fueled mistrust between communities. But we've also seen the flip side, how a carefully crafted community broadcast can ease tensions. I've just cited a few couple of examples earlier. We've also seen examples where information has gone out to debunk hate and clarify facts, and even prevent violence. Globally, similar patterns appear in places like Rwanda, where the hate radio played a tragic role. Dr. Sokfa will agree with me. We went to the museum where we actually got a detailed history about the genocide that happened in Rwanda over 31 years ago today. And we saw the influence of the hate radio calling of Rwanda, what it did to fan flames within the genocide period, and how this has also over time created a shift in the dynamics in terms of how the media has moved from that era to what it is today. Now Rwanda becomes, to me, it's like one of the best in terms of best practices when it comes to peace building using the media. And in Mayana, where social media exacerbated conflicts, we can go on and on. There are so many places where media has destroyed not only the social fabric, but has destroyed a lot in terms of fanning more flames. But at the end of the day, through constant um, trainings, through constant awareness creation, things have actually moved from worse to better. We're not saying that everything has just gone to peace journalism and there is peace, there is peace. Otherwise, we will not hear of peace, of war again in Cameroon. We will not hear of war in DRC. We will not hear of war in Sudan. There is just so much, but at least I always say it is not a complete a shift. There is at least a shift from a bad situation to a better one. And I think that is what we are encouraging when we have forums like this to discuss and see how best we can support not only ourselves but equally the media, because whatever the media churns out is what we of the civilian population, of the government, of the political parties, we give to them to create confusion, division, and hate, social media wise, traditional media wise. So we need to be able to start looking at all of this and looking at what role we are playing to give media all what they have been having to make Omar out there. So if I were you, please, I'll be like one of the advocates for media that will support non-violent communication, will support peace journalism, because who doesn't like peace? We all love peace. Now let's move to the next slide, which has to do with messaging for peace. This is where I always like to really share with everyone who actually wants to make a shift in the narratives. The language, strategic messaging for peace, has to do with the language we use. This shapes how people think. It shapes how people feel and act. If we describe someone as a rebel, we risk demonizing them and closing off dialogue. That is what is happening in Cameroon today. Cameroon calls, the government calls the military is fighting against as terrorists. Who does genuine dialogue with terrorists? So if you start calling me a terrorist, how do you want me to come to that dialogue table? Do you feel I'll trust you that I will take my two legs and come to the dialogue table when you already have brandished me a terrorist? So we should start looking at ways in which we avoid demonizing language in our messaging. If we refer to them as a disenfranchised youth or community member affected by the conflict, we rather, in this case, open the door to understanding. So, messaging for peace emphasizes empathy, human dignity, and shared values. It is proactive, it is inclusive, and careful not to deepen divisions. This is very important because with empathy, you start looking at the words you use on other people. What if those words were used on you? You start feeling the pain of fanning uh, violent conflicts that kills, let's say, a mother with her 3 children. Your message causes somebody to be roasted alive. The other day, was it 3 days ago, a taxi driver was killed and burnt inside his taxi in Cameroon. So these are the kind of things. It is not coming from anywhere else than the messaging that is causing the people to react. So we need to start making sure that we consider empathy, shared values, and human dignity. We start considering the consequences of our actions. We start looking at what words we are using that will bring people together. I always don't want to look at the negative side, but then we need to go back to the negative side because those are the places where the lessons will be learned for us to go towards the positive, towards solution-oriented angles. Now it takes me to the next slide, which is the practical communication strategies. How do we put this into action? The first thing we need to do is we need to start with trusted local channels like community radio. One of the things I succeeded in Cameroon is that I actually leverage local language broadcasters. You know, when you start speaking, sometimes we say we need to be inclusive, but then most of us don't do everything that has to do with inclusion. We need to start using local languages that even those who cannot read or write can be able to at least listen to the radio station and can understand the message in their languages. This is what worked the magic for us in Cameroon. So we now use trusted local channels like community radio, social media groups, town halls. Like I said earlier, we involved traditional leaders. We also got religious figures involved, as well as teachers, those who hold influence. Those are the people that we can be able to use after crafting those messages to churn them out to the right targets. We need to craft messages that resonate emotionally, not just intellectually. We are not out there to show how good we are with English or French or whatever language, but we need to see ourselves in terms of the messages that drive emotions. We need to use real stories, stories that are relatable language, like I said earlier, and local dialects. There are posters that when I was back there in Cameroon, I was doing posters in Pidgin English. We were doing some of our flyers in the local dialects of the communities where we want to go and create awareness. So we need to start doing relatable things with the people so that they can identify with messages and act. So visual tools like posters and video can also be effective, especially in low literacy settings. Above all, we need to listen, don't just broadcast. That's why in some of my content creations, and especially amongst my trainings, I always encourage my media people, whether you're a social media content creator that does shows like video shows, you bring in guests, please always create rooms whereby you have a call in terms of audio programs or feedback in terms of if you are not a media person. I think you listening to me, you can also do Google survey, you can do feedback forms. Always make sure that you get to listen to what the people have to say, because you might just be talking and talking, and at the end of the day, people don't understand. And at the end of the day, you'll just be wasting your time. So we want action that works, and that has to do with involving the people too in your messaging. Now, let me come to a case study. And this case study, Dr. Sokfa, has to do with a peace radio campaign in the northwest region of Cameroon. I'm just doing it summarily because I know we don't have time. And this has to do with the violent confrontation between neighboring communities in the Northwest region amidst this crisis. So we launched a peace radio campaign, and during this time, we aired radio dramas featuring fictional characters navigating intergroup tensions, real interviews with victims and ex-combatants, and facilitated live community dialogues. So this actually worked because people could now listen to the real people affected, to the real people who have committed crimes and decided to drop their arms to say, please, at this point, I'm ready to say, okay, goodbye to the violence. I am ready to contribute to be part of the solution. I'm ready to go out there in the bush and start talking to my brothers to come out, because we have created a lot of pain and stagnation in our own communities. We even caused some of them to say, okay, if you don't want to hear about our government schools being called government schools, all right, let's look for another name. That's how in the northwest region of Cameroon, instead of government schools now, some schools where you have the heated violence, they are now called community schools. And the separatist fighters are okay, and the government is okay. So you see that the solution has come out, and our kids now go to school in some of these areas just because of these two words: government, now community schools. Just one word has shifted the narrative. So over the weeks, we saw people calling in with messages of reconciliation. The most powerful moment was when a former combatant called to share his decision to reintegrate. And the ripple effect was remarkable. Community members began holding listening circles and even replicated the model in other conflict affected areas within the country, like in the Southwest region. Now, let us look at social media and digital tools. Social media is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can spread misinformation and incite violence. On the other hand, it is a powerful tool for connection and education. And during the pandemic, our team used WhatsApp groups to share health information. Here, I'm just talking about, because I just want to vary the examples we used to use with our community media network. Here, I'm talking about the COVID pandemic. We used WhatsApp groups to share health information and peace content. We trained youth ambassadors to counter online hate speech with facts and empathy. It's all about digital literacy and ethical sharing, and equally curating content that uplifts rather than divides. I've said this over and over, and I don't need to repeat it. The need for us to make that shift in the kind of crafted messages we churn out. Go back, sit, if you are a content creator or a media creator, or you're a publisher, or you're an author, especially publishing things that have to do with conflict sensitive issues, kindly use this opportunity. Go back home, or after this webinar, sit, look at the lines of your script. Are they solution oriented? Look at the lines of your audio productions in the past, or your video or your podcasts. Look at it very well. Look at the words that you've been using. Look at the guests that you've been having. Have they been using words that heal or that bring peace? Or have they been using words that pit themselves against others? This is a food for thought. Please, let's not take it let's not take it, let's say, let's not make, how can I put it? Let's not underrate it. Another aspect of it is, if we can move to the next slide, we're getting towards the end. Another aspect is actually engaging stakeholders. And this has to do with the fact that effective peace communication requires a coalition. And usually I always say, I always use the Ubuntu spirit. I am because you are. I can't function as an island. So governments, civil society, media outlets, religious institutions, and the private sector all have roles. For example, when religious leaders co-produce peace in public service announcements, or when civil society organizations co-host community dialogues, credibility is enhanced. The key is sustained engagement, not one-off campaigns. Let's keep the ball rolling. Let's have this coalition, a sustained one, because peace building is not an event. It is a process that communication must continually support. Now, I know there may be some challenges and ethical considerations. So, Dr. Sokfa, if we can look at this quickly. There are real challenges after everything. And we start asking such questions. How do you report conflict without endangering the sources? How do you tell powerful stories without re-traumatizing victims? But I must tell you that ethics must guide every step. And that includes securing informed consent, anonymizing when needed. We don't need to betray our sources. And that includes securing a situation whereby we need to be sensitive to cultural and social dynamics. Communication must be honest and responsible, especially when lives are at stake. This has happened to many of us in these hostile zones where we've been brought to the law courts to release our sources. But then, if there is a media person amongst us, it's a kind of a tricky situation. If I release my source, he gets into a big issue. And secondly, I betray the trust and I'll never go back, I'll never have a second chance. So what is important is the message. And what is important is the content from that source. So sometimes we need to go anonymous when it comes to some sensitive information, because we need people, everyone who is supporting us, to be protected and to be at peace, because they are also risking their lives to broker peace. And that is supporting us with the information we need. Now let's look at global contributions and collaborations. My journey has taken me virtually and physically to peace forums in different countries, virtually like South Africa, virtually India, virtually USA, physically to Germany, to Nigeria, to Ghana, to Uganda. And we have used such platforms to actually share best practices. I've collaborated with international journalists and non-governmental organizations to design training programs and cross-border storytelling initiatives. We want to make sure that what works for me, I want to share it with you so that you can be able to see if you can apply it. That's why when I was in Uganda, in Rwanda, thanks to the Rotary Peace Fellowship, I was so happy visiting the memorial sites, the genocide memorial areas. That gave me a sense of what it means to come back to my own country to share some of the lessons I learned from visiting these sites. One such program linked youth from Cameroon and Nigeria to co-create podcasts about their shared challenges and hopes, especially because the youth in Nigeria and Cameroon now find themselves in a dilemma, almost similar challenges. It's a terrible situation when it comes to the youth situation in both countries. And when we brought them together, you find out that they could actually relate to some of the challenges they are facing. And they brought out serious solutions that are actionable, that has helped some of them who shared their success stories. So these collaborations remind us that while our contexts differ, our struggles and solutions are interconnected. So it takes me to the next slide, which has to do with inspiring stories of change, where there are moments that have reminded me, why do I do this work? Why do I stake my life? For example, like the young man, there was a young man in Cameroon who said a radio drama inspired him to abandon violence. And there was a group of mothers who launched a peace club after hearing a survival story on air. Those are the true hallmarks of strategic messaging. There was one girl I equally mentored who now runs a peace project in her village. And this project has taken her to about 3 countries. So these stories show that peace communication isn't abstract. It is out there to transform lives. And for this particular segment, I want it to be interactive. Let us try an exercise in reframing. And it has to do with youth riot against authorities. If somebody, I just need one comment. If you see youth riot against authorities, what emotions does that trigger? Can somebody tell me, if you see a headline, youth riot against authorities, what emotions does that trigger? You can just drop it as a text message, then Joy, you can read it for us.
All right, I'll be looking.
Yeah, so okay, I'm seeing something. What does that trigger? I'm seeing some messages coming. So if Joy, please kindly help me just read them for us.
Okay, so we have one saying a gap in leadership.
Yeah.
We have another answer, frustration, sadness,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you can see that this message is actually bringing in things that come in to tell you that it comes from a negative experience. And you see all what the rebellion, you see it's coming in as something that is the youths have felt and they want to act, and it's not a positive one. Now let's reframe it. I'm reframing it now, and then prepare to tell me how this means for you. Youth express anger over governance failures. What does it tell you now? Youth express, youth riot, youth express anger over government failures. Tell me how this makes the change in the narrative. So from youth riot against authorities, I have reframed it now. Youth, rather than rioting, they express anger over governance failures. Can we have feedback in the chat room? Thank you. Standing up for their rights, attracting attention, seeking accountability. The youth are looking out for their, I can't really read all the patriotism. Yeah, Joy, if you can help me read them.
Yes. So patriotism, the youth are looking out for their country, wanting what's best for their country.
Good.
different perspective.
Amazing. That's it. So you now see that at least it is getting towards a certain level. It is not that too vengeful, like, oh, they want to vent their anger, but they like in that actionable way, but they are now expressing their anger over governance failures. And this is what it means. Thank you so much for your bright feed. In short, the feedbacks are well on point from both ends. And this is what it means. It has changed or shifted the narratives. These two headlines, reframing, the second one, has helped us move from judgment to understanding. So this is the skill we can all practice. Let's move from just giving it out there, but let's try to see if we can avoid judgment, and then we see how we can produce headlines that people can look at them and start understanding where the youth are coming from or where this person is coming from. Now I'm getting to the last but one slide, which are the key takeaways. As we begin to close, this is what I think we should actually remember. Communication is not neutral. Reframing is very important. Every word builds or breaks. And so strategic communication, when rooted in empathy and truth, can dismantle hatred and rebuild trust. Whether you are a journalist, whether you are an activist, a teacher, or policy maker, your words matter. So we need to be intentional. And now, what is the call to action? I share it in the last slide, which is I'm really grateful that I get to share this platform with you. And one of the things I want to believe we need to do is that we need to acknowledge the fact that everyone has a voice and is capable of contributing to peace and conflict. So I urge you to become a peace communicator in your space, whether on social media, on the field, or if you're invited or on audiovisual or on the media, please be a peace communicator in your space. Challenge divisive narratives. Share stories that heal. Promote dialogue wherever you are. Encourage media accountability. And support, please, peace journalism narratives. And in this way, I want to believe that at a certain point, we will keep building a world where words lead to peace, not pain. The world needs your voice. And so thank you very much for listening to me. And that will be it for today. So I would love to hear what resonated, what challenges you're facing in your work, if you want to share, or what ideas you want to explore after listening to me. Or if you have any questions, like Joy said, this is the moment where at a certain point, we don't let this conversation to be a solo one, but we want to actually share. It must not be a question, but it can be like something you must have experienced, and there has been a shift in the dynamics. So over to you, Joy. Maybe you may want to handle this, and then I'll wait for any feedback that it's required from my end. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Rosa. And the first thing I'd like each and everyone to do is just give her a round of applause. Let's appreciate her. Let's share some love with her. We've been told that words can either spread pain or peace. So you need to choose wisely, and especially having understood the emotional, the psychological power of language, the power of words. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. So many take homes. In fact, my notebook is filled up, and I'm sure all of us have jotted down quite a number of points. So, Rosa, there's a number of questions and comments. So I'll start with the conversation, the comments which are on the chat. I can see excellent perspective on peace through media, Rose, inspirational. Someone has said excellent. Another person has said that they enjoyed this absolutely. It was absolutely insightful. Thank you. Spot on, very relevant and helpful. Awesome. Amazing presentation. And then we have a question. How do you address or approach sensitive issues relating to religion or political ideologies on truth-based evidence? Because it's obviously sensitive. So that's one question. I'll just take a few questions and then you can, just can answer all of them. Then what tools or frameworks would you recommend for designing a communication strategy for a divided community? What tools would you recommend? And then what if you deal with criminal elements with obvious criminal intent and opposing international laws, etc.? How do you approach that? Then yes, so we can address those questions, then I'll read the rest of the comments. So keep the comments coming. Because of time, I will request that we only address those questions. And Rosa, I'll give you about 2 minutes to just make a rejoinder, and then we will have our closing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I really want to appreciate the first question that came in there from, I can't remember her name, but at least it's a great question. And we know that addressing sensitive issues like religion, political ideologies based on truth and evidence requires careful balance between honesty, respect, and clarity. And this is what I will advise. And one thing I would like to tell you is the first thing, you need to stick to verifiable facts. Because when discussing religion and politics, always I rely on well-established evidence-based sources. It can be history, it can be legal documents, it can be scientific consensus, it can be demographic data. You need to distinguish clearly between facts, interpretations, and of course, belief or opinions. So most of the time, some people out of sensationalism or some related factors, they get to put in their emotions into it. So just stick to verifiable facts. Another aspect is respecting beliefs without endorsing them. So sometimes I aim to describe belief systems and ideologies accurately without passing judgment. For example, if Christians believe Jesus is the Son of God, Muslims honor Jesus as a prophet, but not divine. So these are ideological positions, not empirical claims. So this approach respects the integrity of belief systems while staying neutral. Another aspect, you need to avoid loaded language. Sometimes I avoid terms that carry bias, sarcasm, and language in this case shapes perceptions. So it's important to keep it as neutral and clear as possible. And of course, we need to recognize cultural and emotional weight. Sometimes the truth can be presented factually without ignoring its emotional impact. For instance, when discussing colonialism, religious violence, or systemic inequality, I acknowledge the pain or controversy involved. So we need to be mindful, and we also need to offer multiple perspectives and of course clarify the scope of our evidence, because this will add to some of the intricacies that are involved. Some areas, especially in politics and theology, they contain value-based claims, and that cannot be proven or disproved in the same way as scientific ones. So we need to really be mindful. And so to sum it up, please let's stay with the facts. Let's stay with the facts. Let's not judge, because this will not be really helpful in this situation. I hope this has addressed your question. And then for the tools or the frameworks that I can recommend, first thing I want to say to you is this is a very, very important actionable question. And I want to say that designing a communication strategy, for example, for a divided community, especially around sensitive topics like religion, politics, race, or history, requires deliberate structure, inclusive engagement, and trust buildings. So sometimes this is what you can actually apply when it comes to frameworks for dialogue and understanding. The first thing you can think about is dialogue mapping. You can use structuring complex or polarizing conversations. And then, of course, you can use visual dialogue mapping tools. And then this helps in such a way that you can visually map arguments out, assumptions, and stakeholder concerns without privileging any view, and it encourages collective intelligence. And another thing is, if we look at public dialogue framework, we can always explore values and experiences, not just positions. And then we can also engage across differences in smaller groups. We must not just look for the bigger groups. And then we can also reflect collectively on shared goals and also act collaboratively towards change. And last but not the least, we can also think about messaging tools and strategy frameworks. And this has to do with focusing on how framing shapes perceptions. And then the core idea, don't just tell people facts, reframe the conversation around shared values and metaphors. For example, justice reform instead of crime control. So those be mindful of when you're using words. That's just an example. And of course, your map should show short-term activities to long-term activities for community healing. You can define your long-term goals, barriers, target audiences, and then levels for change. You can involve media, leaders, schools, teachers, like I said. And then, of course, you can also, when it comes to facilitation and conflict transformation models, you can think about nonviolent communication. A key household name is Marshall Rosenberg. And here you can focus on needs, feelings, and empathetic connection. Here you look at key formulas you can use to observe the feeling, the need, and the request. And of course, we are in a digital age. Be mindful of making sure that you can use organizational tools. You have Google Forms, you have collaborative mapping that can let you look for network mapping, and then you can look for community messaging. There is this nation builder or WhatsApp groups. As small as the WhatsApp groups, you can also use that for your community messaging. And then, of course, don't forget that the world is now a global village. You can also use virtual dialogues and workshops through Zooms, breakout rooms like we are doing right now. So try to do all of this and be mindful that you should not forget about principles like do no harm, diversify your messengers, emphasize shared humanity, be transparent, and of course, do not forget to follow up. So I think that should be it when it comes to setting up your tools to get something meaningful for your peace building. Joy, have I missed out on another question?
There are so many questions flowing, and that's
Really?
because everyone is so enthusiastic about the topic. But sadly, we do have a time caveat.
Oh,
And so what I'd like us to do, I'll read some of the comments and I will share the questions with Rosa. And
Okay.
Rosa, maybe you can, if you're able to just write down an answer and we will share with all of you. So when you were registering, I'm sure you had, there was a place where you were asked if we can retain your email. In case you clicked no and you'd like to have some of your answers shared, please do. You can private inbox me on this particular platform and we'll reach out to you. We really want to honor Rosa's time. But Rosa, before you go, let me just read some of the lovely comments I'm seeing on the chat section. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. Peace starts from home. All the failures in the African continent are due to foreign superpowers who do not know the major cause of conflict.
Yeah.
Yes, another one is that this presentation is timely and relevant. Timely and relevant information from a Kenyan context. Kindly share the tools that to be used. I think these are some of the tools. Listening to all these questions, Sokfa, I think we have to consider doing part 2 of this, where we do a bit of practicals. Because there are so many questions coming up, and definitely this is something I believe we can consider. The insights are amazing. Thank you, ma'am. So, ladies, gentlemen, joining us from all over the world, please join me in giving a round of applause to our lovely presenter today. Thank you, Rosa, for sharing words of wisdom. And I mean, it's absolute.
Sounds like we've lost Joy.
Yeah.
But I think what she was trying to say is that it has been absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, Rose. It was wonderful to have you. And as she was saying, we will probably ask you to come back so that you can do another session, focusing on some of the questions raised and practical tools. And for everyone else, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time with us today. Stay connected. You can type in your goodbyes and wave or show your face and say goodbye, whatever works for you. But please stay in touch, message us on LinkedIn. We will share the videos, send us emails, whatever. And if you feel like you are doing an interesting project that you would want us to hear about, you want to share with our community, reach out to me or Joy or anyone, or speak to us on LinkedIn, and I will follow up with you. I'll see you next month on the first Thursday of the month. We usually have these sessions on the first Thursday of every month. So we look forward to seeing all of you again. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Rose.
Thank you.
Evening.
Thank you.
Sorry for that. It's lost connection. Yes, Sokfa, you can close for us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining. As we leave, I'd like each one of us, before you leave, please put a word of blessing on the chat as you go. Anything, it could be something, a word of encouragement, an affirmation. Just type it out as you leave. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure having you. See you next Thursday, first Thursday of the month from 5 to 6:30 p.m. We'll always have a session and you'll be sure to get information. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hello. Thanks. Bye-bye.